Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We will obviously give it a couple of minutes for everyone to get started here, but excited to have a good crowd this morning, anticipating around 20, 25 people. Hi, Shira.
Hi.
Good morning, Adam. How are you?
Morning. Doing all right.
Good.
For sort of the life of COVID, if you hear a screaming child in the background, that is my niece. My niece, not my son.
Yeah.
Son is pretty quiet. My niece is like 15 months old, and she's going through this phase where she likes to sound like a pterodactyl.
No worries. I think we've all gotten used to it.
Yeah, I do my very best to be able to answer people's questions without a screaming dinosaur in the background.
No problem. We had about 25 people sign up, so we'll just wait a few minutes before we kick things off this morning. And why don't I'll just do these first couple of intro slides and then take these down, that way we can all see each other better and interact a bit. So the meeting is being recorded, so don't feel like you have to take crazy notes. If anyone's saying anything you really want to capture, we can always share the recording after for you. So welcome. This is part of our MassTLC summer intern programming. Typically, we have really fun lawn games and all these, day of activities in person for people. We obviously can't do that this summer, so instead we're offering sessions with industry experts to be able to connect and learn a little bit about how you can navigate your career path. So today's session is focused on engineering, where a career can take you there if you're a CS major or other major, and looking at engineering. So we start every meeting, we thank our global sponsors of MassTLC, the companies that really enable us to do everything that we are able to do. Definitely some great names here, located here in Massachusetts, so keep them on your radar as you start to explore opportunities. Akamai and Mimecast are specifically sponsoring the intern programming this summer, so a special shout out to them as well. And today we have Shira, Haddad, Director of Engineering at Kyruus, joined with Adam, Conrad, Director of Engineering at Indigo, who are going to just talk a little bit about their own career paths, just to give you an idea of their experience and where they're at, and then they really want to help you guys. So we have some additional questions to kind of ask them that were submitted by registrants, and we really want to make this, especially if we have a smaller crowd here this morning, as engaging as possible for you guys here. This is a great opportunity to connect with real people in industry, and they're here to help you. So feel free to turn on your cameras if you want, and really just be as engaging as you'd like. So at this time, let me stop my screen share so we can all see each other a bit better. I will go to Shira first, if you just want to introduce yourself and just a little bit of background on what your career path has been like, maybe where you went to college and kind of the direction you've taken.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. So I'm from Israel originally. I went and studied mathematics and I loved it. Then I started working in QA automation. I wrote a lot of scripts and I really love that part of QA. Sorry, I had some echo. So from QA, I kind of found myself into management of QA, and then I came to the US following my partner for his school. But then I started here as QA again as an individual contributor and found myself in product and then managing QA again and then managing a whole engineering department. And I've switched companies a few months ago and now I'm director of engineering in Kyruus. I'm more strong on the management side, but I do speak engineering fluently and I love that part. And I would love to tell kind of more details and stories as we go along.
Great, thank you. And Adam, I'll let you go.
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam Conrad, I'm Director of Engineering at Indigo. My background is very rooted in computer science. I started programming when I was in middle school, and then I used that to, actually I started with computer engineering at Brown University, and then I moved to computer science halfway through. From there, I've worked everywhere from really large companies like Microsoft and Vistaprint, all the way to really small startups, where I was the first employee at Star Street, which was eventually bought by Patty Betfair, the same company that bought FanDuel. And now I work in sort of in the middle ground here at Indigo. We're about 1,000 employees. I run one of the divisions. So we have 3 major marketplaces: grain, transport, and carbon. I run the transport marketplace. So I hire for the entire team. I do the engineering management for the engineering managers. So I train them. And we have a team of about 14 right now, and growing. So yeah, my experience is very rooted in computer science, everything from back end to front end, database administration. I'm still very technical. I still do a lot of code reviews. I run my own side projects. I code in my free time. So I'm very rooted technically in the art and science of computer science.
Great, thank you. And since there's not a huge crowd here, it won't take too long. I think it'd be helpful if I'll just go around and call on people to just introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind, maybe what year you are in your college career, if you are already in the workforce. I know some people that signed up are, and just maybe one thing you're looking to get out of this session. So I'll start with you, Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm a senior at UMass Lowell. I'm currently trying to wrap up my college career this coming semester, so looking for networking and places to do. Right now I'm actually working on my honors project, which is making a haptic touch glove using capacitors that I had to build myself. So I thought this would be a great thing, for people to see, because it is kind of fun to build capacitors that work at like 450 volts.
Great.
And it works.
I'll go to Danley next.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. Hello, my name is Danley Morin. I'm a 3rd year in UMass Boston. I'm currently on my first intern at Vessel Nautical as a QA engineer. I was invited to join this meeting from my principal manager, my scrum master from Vessel Nautical, and I just wanted to understand overall on how Shira and Adam has gotten far in the engineering field, because for me, I don't really know much about the field other than college. So I just wanted to get a whole, avenue of how you guys got there. Thank you.
Great. Next, I'll go to Ron.
Hi everyone, my name is Ron. Thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to us. So I'm an upcoming senior at UMass Lowell, and I completely agree with Danley. I'm here to see your perspective on the field and how you guys got here. So thank you.
Great. Nikhil.
Hey, I'm an intern with Nuance Communications. I'm a speech and data science intern with them, and that's how I found out about this. And I was hoping to like get some. This is my first internship, and starting next year, I'll be trying to get a job and actually working in the industry. So I was looking to get some advice on how you guys got started and what are some things that you should keep in mind as you start your journey.
Great. Christine?
Hi, I am Christine. I'm also working for Nuance this summer as a automation engineer for the QA side, so kind of cool. I just wanted to join this conversation because kind of want to like dip my toe in the industry before I graduate next year and, you know, just scope out what the field is like and how you guys are doing and what your thoughts are on the industry. So thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Great. And Ronak?
Hi, my name is Ronak. I'm from UMass Lowell, going to be a senior coming year. I'm a computer science major as well. Just want like I want to get out like how the journey has been for you guys and what you guys did to get here. So hopefully I get that out of this meeting. Then.
Great. Dana? Dana, I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, I'm Tanashri and I'm doing my master's in University at Buffalo in computer science, and I'm going to graduate by February and I'll be looking for jobs. And I thought as a fresher, it will be helpful for me to know the experiences you have so I could learn from you all and have a networking session. Thank you.
Great. And I think Ron, and unless there's anyone else I've missed, I think we just have Ron left.
No, I went.
You did? Okay. All right, great. So we can, thank you, everyone. It's just helpful to get the context of who's in the room, where people are at in their careers. So I appreciate that. So I think we can start with a little more general questions, and then I have some really specific questions that people put in there. But just, you know, kind of a theme that's come up is what to keep in mind as you're starting your career. So if Adam or Shira, feel free to just chime in, but, you know, is there one or two things that were really helpful for you as you started, or things you've kept in mind as you've pivoted or taken on different opportunities that you think can translate to this audience?
Yeah, I can get started. So I think it can feel a bit overwhelming when you start your career in a company. I would say that it's always good to maintain both short-term goals, kind of, you know, who is my manager, who are my teammates, who am I going to work with, but in parallel, try to think about what does the company do, what are they trying to achieve, what is the long-term vision. When you maintain that kind of mindset, conversations within the company and networking within the company, and then later outside of the company when you meet other people, will make it much more easier, instead of just kind of being only on your code, only on your tickets, only on doing what you need to do, and kind of opening your mind into what exactly we're trying to achieve as kind of a bigger team. So that's something I found very useful to myself.
I would put a lot of focus on interview prep. I didn't do that when I first graduated, and I'm still kicking myself for failing the Facebook interview in 2008. I think I'd be talking with you all on a yacht or something like that if I had done that in 08. So, yeah, it is, you know, we could get into a whole discussion about how wrong or broken hiring is right now in software. That's a whole separate discussion. Nonetheless, it does exist. There is interview prep that is required. I would honestly, you know, it's July, so for the sort of September hiring season, you've only got like a month for hiring. If you have the time, I would at least prep 3 months for interview prep questions, technical coding interview questions, get comfortable writing on a whiteboard, get comfortable working on online repls like HackerRank or Google Docs. The companies in software, they use them. And the coding technical interview is the gold standard right now. So again, like I said, we could go into a whole discussion on why that's right or wrong, but it is reality right now. So, you know, your best chance for landing a good job in this current environment is to just stand out by having a really solid interview prep. The other thing I would say is just practice writing production software. In academia right now, there's a big focus on writing these projects that have a very clear input and output, but they don't really focus on what it takes to actually push things to production, to have something live to customers. There's a whole sort of separate world of infrastructure that's required that from your first job, you're going to have to basically dive into that there isn't a lot of experience in academia on. So if you can push it up to Firebase, or you can launch it on Heroku, just get experience even just minimally launching something to the public and seeing what happens. Even if it's a side project for fun, even just getting one thing launched can really help put you ahead of your peers. And I think that's sort of my final message, is that anything you can do to stand out matters. At this point, you're all going to be college grads. You're all going to be looking for jobs at the same time. What can you do to stand out from the crowd so that when someone looks at 75 recs, which I had to for a job opening we had, how do I pick which of the college students to grab? The ones that have the most experience with shipping production software were the ones certainly that stood out. So anything you can do to make yourself stand out from the crowd is huge.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking what Adam said, don't be dismissive at any part of the interview. Even if a code question looks very easy to you, put the thought into it, try to do the best you can. I saw a lot of candidates kind of being dismissive and doing something for the tech exercise, but we wanted them to kind of put some emphasis on testing, on scalability, and kind of understanding what is it going to be used for later. So kind of try to be serious about the code that you're submitting, and kind of like, what are you doing and who are you talking to? And just don't assume something is okay or trivial. Just be the best that you can for each one of those parts.
Great. And if anyone here has a follow-on question, feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in. Otherwise, I can just ask a few other questions that were submitted ahead of time. To follow along with prepping for an interview, making sure you're as prepared as possible, someone had asked, do you recommend any good resources for that beyond a company webpage to really understand their business? But are there resources you'd point people to for prep and training? And in that same line of thinking, are there podcasts you recommend, or certain community groups or areas that you think people can use as a resource?
Adam, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot. In fact, I actually am writing a book on algorithms for professionals because it's just so overwhelming, these resources available. And a lot of it is really dry textbook material, really hard to understand. So from what I've seen, your best bet is one kind of book for sort of reference. The one that I'm seeing most applicable to jobs is grokking algorithms. That's a really good one. That gives you sort of like the baseline of, okay, what do I need to know about data structures and algorithms for professional questions? Now, if you are not yet a senior and you're about to start your last semester or two, absolutely take a data structures and algorithms course. They are hard. Sometimes they're not fun, but like I said, if I could go back in time, I would have taken all the DS and algo classes that were offered at school to prep myself for that Facebook interview. I would have done so much better if I had that prep. So I would say, do whatever you can to take those classes. That prep will be invaluable for you. In terms of books that are more practical in terms of actually asking you questions. So, the way I kind of like to think about it right now is studying for interview questions is like studying for the SAT. The SAT doesn't test how smart you are. The SAT tests how well you are at taking the SATs. Similarly, interview questions don't test you how good of a programmer you're going to be at a company. they test you how good of an interviewer you can be on the day that you're interviewed. We try really hard to ask questions that are relevant to the job you're going to have at Indigo. But at the end of the day, especially if you're very junior coming out of college, you don't have any professional experience. So you don't really know what professional coding is like. Your closest thing to that is something like a DS and Algo course. That's why we ask those questions. So anything you can do along those lines to get prep questions is going to be super helpful. The one that I really like is elements of programming interviews for two reasons. One, they have 3 different flavors. They have one in Java, C++, and Python. So likely you'll have incurred one or all 3 of those languages in college. The other reason why I like it is it's a bit more difficult than the other ones. The common one that's passed around to folks is cracking the coding interview. There's a lot of editions of it. The latest edition, I think, is the 6th edition, and it has the most questions that are the most updated. What I don't like about that is 2 reasons. One, because it's so ubiquitous, companies have used those questions, and now they've rotated them out. So there's not a lot of, the practice you could get from those questions isn't as good as the ones in elements of programming interviews. The other is that the difficulty isn't as high, which means that some of the companies have upped their skill level in terms of the questions they ask. I've yet to find anybody who's gone through elements of programming interviews and not gotten a job if they went through all the questions. It's kind of like, you know, when you buy those books that are like 10,000 SAT questions that are like this thick, but they still add 100 and 200 points because sort of the game there is if you look at enough SAT prep questions, you will find ones that you've seen before and you'll be able to answer them. Similarly, there's only a finite number of interview questions that people are asking right now. Outside of the systems design ones, which are a bit more freeform. So if you find a really big book that has a lot of difficult questions, chances are nothing is going to surprise you when you actually come in and do an interview somewhere. So that's why I really like elements of programming interviews, Python, Java, C++, whatever flavor you're interested in.
Yeah, I would also say plan your prep time. If your interview is tomorrow, don't try to learn something completely new by tomorrow. Try to see, okay, how much time do I have before my next interview? Then, you know, go ahead and read the book or go and Google the company, try to understand what you can answer, but don't try to come up with stuff that you never knew just for that interview. That will not be the time where you should be tested on something that you just learned. I did find that there are like other resources. I think the books are awesome. Definitely, you know, go ahead and go through them and try to solve them. There's Code Signal, which is really nice for just coding exercises where you can get some feedback on also. And sometimes you can just Google like how to, you know, different interviews for front end and then what kind of questions you will see in YouTube. That will kind of get you a bit into the mindset of like, okay, there will be some interaction here. You can't have canned answers. You can't have something that's, you know, written down and then just, you know, give it to the interviewer. You need to kind of interact on it, give your thoughts and kind of your thought process on it.
Oh, so that actually reminds me, there's a couple of online resources and so HackerRank is one of them. They have an entire thing on data structures and algorithms, warm-up questions that then lead into their sort of competitive programming world, which is, you know, it's more gamified. So if you like that approach with the sort of real-time feedback on a laptop, HackerRank is really good. The one that everybody touts, oh, let me see if I can post this in the chat. There is one subreddit which specifically focuses on I think it's CS career questions. That might be one where a lot of people ask for feedback on how to sort of get into the field. But yeah, I think it's this one. So I'm gonna post this here in the chat now. But basically the often touted advice is leetcode.com, L-E-E-T code.com. That's one where they actually post questions from Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. And the advice that just is like so overplayed at this point is grind LeetCode. If you spend 3 months grinding LeetCode questions, like take one a day for the next 90 days, that's a really super minimal way of getting to the result of I probably can handle. Basically the advice is if you can handle a medium or easy question in under 30 minutes and a hard question in under 45 minutes, you're gonna have no problem in interviews for most big companies like Amazon or Google.
Great, thank you. So moving a little bit from, that's getting started, resources, people can look for, like I said, I know people are writing stuff down. I'll share the recording if you're not capturing everything right now. So then, once you start your career, just a popular question was, how do you prevent burnout? Have you experienced that in a certain role or working on a certain product or something? And do you have any recommendations for people there?
Yeah, I would say it's always good to kind of maintain a plan for yourself that is also 1 and 3 and 5 years. I know it sounds cliche, but kind of having that and working towards that, to me, it definitely helped preventing the burnout, because even if what I do right now seems tedious or maybe not, the most fun I can have in my job, at least I'm maintaining a plan and kind of taking steps, even if sometimes small, towards doing the next thing that will be interesting for me. So I would say that it's really important to kind of maintain those two plans, like what am I doing today and how do I contribute to the company I'm working in, and how kind of moving that along, whatever, the sprint walk or the tickets I'm working on, but still I'm kind of maintaining my own, it can be a side project within the company, or it can be a side project outside of the company to kind of move forward on that as well. That was something that was very helpful for me as well.
So I think burnout comes from not enjoying your work. It doesn't come from working too many hours. Now, this might seem like a controversial statement, but I think at the age of 22 or 23, if you're coming out of college, that's the best time to put in your hours. But what prevents burnout is not, oh, I'm working so many hours. What prevents burnout is working on something you enjoy, that the people you work with, you enjoy being with, the environment that you're in is supportive of learning quickly. So I would say it's going to be very difficult as someone with student loans to look at your offers and go, maybe I choose the one that pays me $5,000 less, but I really enjoy the work. Knowing that you have loans to pay off, I get it. I had to make those decisions myself too. But at the same time, if you choose the one that makes you the most money, but you're miserable, that will take a toll on your mental health. Even if you're only working 40 hours a week. I just read a Hacker News thread this morning about someone who just joined Amazon and said, is it common to be burnt out after 9 months? And the threads basically were, you could be on a bad team. Yeah, you get paid a lot, but you don't necessarily enjoy the work or nothing gets done. So it does have a real impact on people. And there's something to be said about you can't be paid enough to do crappy work. So I would say burnout is not necessarily about not putting in long hours. I think this is your time in your life where you can do it. You don't really have many obligations after school other than, paying your rent and loans. You don't have, a lot of other obligations that people that are older and more experienced in the industry have. So this is your time to sort of grind and learn the skills quickly. But the best way to facilitate that is to make sure that you have the sort of environment available to you to really enjoy what you're doing and the people there to support you so that you can learn and grow quickly.
Great. I have more questions, but I do want to take a minute to pause and see if anyone here has something. I know some new people have joined in the past 10 minutes or so. If anyone wanted to introduce themselves and where they're at, or if people want to chime in with any questions that they're thinking of now that we've gotten started.
Yeah, actually, when I was working at Kronos, I got a project out of left field that was an AR project, and Kronos does time clocks for like workforce management. So I was wondering, have you guys ever had something that's like, where did this come from? Like a project like that?
Can you give another example for that? Like, you mean they're working on specific industry and all of a sudden there was like a different
Yeah, they
type?
wanted like an AR app, an augmented reality app to demonstrate their clock with an AR headset, which was like, we have the physical clock, why do we need this?
Yeah.
So I had to figure out something to do with this thing that would actually be useful.
So I can give you the business reason for why that likely happened. So a company like that likely had some giant offer on the table from some company that said, hey, by the way, we're partnering with Oculus and some big customer is going to pay us a ton of money if we do this demo on an Oculus Rift. So then that goes to somebody else who gets to your manager who says, by the way, Brian, you need to start writing this AR app yesterday. So they don't just come out of the blue. There's usually some motivator behind that you're not privy to just because the gaggle of business people that's trying to assemble this thing at the last minute, it happens. The way I would interpret that is, wow, cool, I get to work on an AR project. Even though I was doing something completely different, having experience in a really hot segment like AR, VR is awesome, especially at your age. So if you have the opportunity to jump on something like that, I would dive in head first.
Yeah, I got that job because they asked, do you know Blender? I'm like, yes. So that's how it happened. And I was doing this entire thing for like 4 months. And I actually got it to a functional place and was demoing it, and everyone was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they all loved it.
That one thing that is very common when you start out is if you run into scenarios like this, don't worry if your code gets thrown out.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing I think a lot of people who are brand new to the industry don't realize is that whether it's an R&D project or you're spinning up a new service and you're trying an MVP to make something work, oftentimes, especially in school, you covet your projects because they're your senior capstone or it's a final exam and you feel very proud of the work you've done. We take a lot of pride in the work we do throughout our careers. Oftentimes it gets thrown out, rewritten, redone. Don't get too attached to your code. For right, wrong, or different reasons, that AR app may get scrapped. It may get redone in a completely different language, and that's okay. That's very much a part of being in the workforce, is not getting too attached to your code, not because it isn't good code, but because business requirements change, partnerships change. There's a huge sea change in the industry, and so you have to be willing to adapt, and that means sometimes throwing out some or all of your code. It's very, very common. It's nothing personal to anyone individually. It's just sort of the name of the game.
Yeah, I've had that, but yeah, I wasn't just doing the code. I was doing the modeling and the integration projects, and I had to use my own phone for the whole darn thing. But the green screen's blocking. Anyway, but yeah, had to use my phone, and it's still on my phone because I was allowed to keep it on there because it's just cool.
Great. Anyone else have a question? I thought I saw someone come off mute for a second.
Hi, I was just going to introduce myself. I kind of jumped in a little late, but my name's Steve Oxner. I'm a conversational experience and design intern right now at Nuance Communications, but I'm majoring in user experience and computer science at Bentley University in Waltham. So just wanted to introduce myself.
Hi.
Hi.
Great, thanks. So to move on to a couple other questions. Someone's wondering, can you talk more about the relationship between product managers and engineers and a way to transition if you're in one area to the other, just kind of how they work together?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So the relationship is really, really important. I do think that between different companies and different industries, the distribution of tasks might be different. In some companies, product managers will be responsible for X, and in other companies, they will be responsible for Y. So I would say first clarifying the responsibilities and what each team should be responsible for will be very helpful. And then nothing will get kind of stuck in the middle because that might cause some friction or conflicts. Definitely work on it. They should be your best friends. And when they are your best friends, it's the best quality of software that you can produce. And when there are conflicts, the product will suffer from that. So that's really important to kind of maintain. Maintaining that relationship is really good for the product. It's really good for you. It's really good for the team. But also if you're talking about transitioning between one role and another, learning what they do, why it is important, and why it's good to have the counterpart and kind of, the two sides sometimes pulling for different directions, those healthy conflicts. That's something that comes in very useful when you say, okay, actually I want to do more of that, or I want to do less of what I'm doing today. And kind of going back to the tasks, what is it that you're interested in when you're thinking about transition? Is it more kind of breaking down the requirements? Is it more system design? Is it more kind of going and talking to users? Or in the opposite side, is it more kind of writing the code, or is it more understanding how that code will be implemented with existing practices? So understanding the tasks and then thinking what will be good for me is something that I find very useful. And then the new role that you will transition to might not be exactly the one that someone else that in the company does, but it might be a combination between what you know and what you're bringing into the role with this new thing that you want to try and do now.
The only other thing I'll add is for product management, really they are your first line of customer. So they are representing all the customers' input and feedback into one singular person or team, and then synthesizing that for the engineers. So if you want to understand what your user is thinking or what you need to do in order to create a compelling product, your product manager is the source of truth for all of that. In terms of transitioning to product management, as Shira said, I would look at what they do in the day-to-day. A lot of it is meetings. A lot of it is talking with stakeholders and customers. There's really no coding involved at all, other than understanding requirements at the very earliest stages of the software lifecycle. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely see what your product managers are doing at your internships or the companies you're working at. It's not something you typically get into right out of college, or even a few years out of college. It's a management job, which requires some previous experience. Oftentimes at Indigo, we see people who have an MBA background coming in for an intro job. Otherwise, they've already had experience in industry in some other tangential field before they get into product management. So my guess is, given this audience, you'd likely be an engineer transitioning into product management rather than starting as a PM moving into engineering. So I would definitely focus on that. And if you really are interested in a change, like I said, a lot of people use MBAs as an opportunity to switch fields, if that's something that's compelling for you.
Great, thank you. And then just adding a little bit more there, beyond product management and engineering, how much do engineers intersect with other departments beyond their own? And how's that experience been for you?
So it really varies between different companies and the different structures. I think that's definitely a question to ask in the interview. I think that's always a very interesting answer to hear from the company that interviews you. And I think you can learn a lot from those kind of interactions. From my experience, when I was an engineer, I interacted a lot with technical support and kind of maybe help them, triage bugs that are coming in and understanding what we're doing, etc. Definitely product management, as we've discussed earlier. And sometimes it will be something that's a bit more interesting. Like in smaller companies, you might interact a lot with sales or sales engineering and kind of get stuff out there so people can test it. And sometimes in bigger companies, you will have less kind of interaction with those departments because you will already have departments that are responsible for that kind of relationships. So I would say it really varies, and it might impact your decision on kind of what type of work do you want to do. Are you more into kind of big projects that might get shipped after a few months, or maybe you want to be kind of more iterative and kind of help solve emergencies and problems that come up every day, and that will kind of impact who you're talking to in the company.
Yep, I think a lot of it has to do with the kind of company you work at. So consumer companies, the ones you think of like Snapchat or Facebook, when they talk with consumers, a lot of it is marketing. So there's a lot of interaction with the marketing teams to make a compelling product for people to convince them to buy. Whereas with business to business companies, which there are a lot of in the Boston area, HubSpot, Drift, Indigo, come to mind, that's going to be more sales driven, because the sales cycle is a lot longer. and you spend a lot of money to get one customer, and that customer provides a lot of value for you. So at the B2B companies I've worked at, a lot of interaction with sales engineering, that support staff. With consumer companies, it's a lot with design and marketing. So yeah, per Shira's advice, it really just depends on the company you're working at. I've even had interactions with legal. If you are a company that is going to be going to IPO soon, you'd be surprised at how many nuanced legal requirements there are for the software you have to deliver. So I've been in talk with some of our general counsel, which, you know, for some people they go, oh man, if I have to chat with legal, that's scary. It's not. We have to work on the same things to get the job done, which is one of my favorite things about working in software is the ever-changing requirements and learning something new every day. It's not just about learning new coding features. It's about, oh, I didn't realize what GDPR actually meant. I didn't realize that there are certain licenses that I can use for open source software. There's always something new to learn every day, which is really, really fun. And having all these different people across all these different divisions makes it even more fun because there's more people to learn from.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Great, and you actually, oh, go ahead, Shira.
I would even add, if you don't see the ever-changing nature of engineering as something positive, I would suggest taking a big breath and rethinking that. It always changes, and it's really awesome, and kind of all these interactions. And I had interactions with people who are like, oh, everything changes all the time, it's hard. Yes, it's hard, but also that's kind of how it is in most companies, not all the time, obviously, but it's really interesting to see the security requirements changing, the legal marketing, kind of understanding how your product is going to be used. That's the exciting part in engineering, and kind of seeing how what you're doing is actually coming into and impacting other people. It's really awesome.
Great. So one more question, Adam, you had mentioned open source. Do you have advice for a CS undergrad that would want to start working with the open source community on projects?
Yes, and I have another link that I can post. Give me just a second. I have to like type it as I'm trying to say it. I'm not very good at multitasking. Yes, here we go. So I'm going to post this here in the chat. It's yourfirstpr.github.io. So one of the hardest things about getting into open source is knowing where to start. You might think, oh, well, I use React in some of my fun projects. I'll try helping React out. And then you look and there's 1,000 issues open, literally 1,000 issues. They're really esoteric bugs about some Safari bug from 2 versions ago that's breaking. You don't have that version on your laptop. You don't even know where to get started because the code base is 10,000 lines long. So they can be really overwhelming, and then you give up and you go, well, why am I even trying? This resource is really great because what it does is it crowdsources all of the issues tagged as good first issue, so that for the open source repositories that need help, they have good documentation and they have small bugs that are very easy to digest and easy to learn and help you grow. So if you're looking to contribute, that's a really great resource because it's really easy to get started. And I think momentum is the biggest thing in open source. If you feel confident that you can contribute to one repository and you understand how their workflow and tool chain works, then you're gonna be more apt to solve the other ones and start to build momentum on that. And then eventually you could become a primary contributor or owner of an open source project if you get really invested and interested in a project like that. So this is a really good resource because it helps you find the projects that A, need help, and B, can get help from someone more junior so that you can contribute and feel confident that what you're doing actually helps and matters.
Awesome. So we structured this event to do virtual speed networking at 10:45. I do want to give another opportunity if anyone has questions. Feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I know Adam and Shira, you both said, you know, you have to love the ever-changing nature, and that's something that has to excite you and not frustrate you. Do you have 1 or 2 more just kind of pieces of advice for these students as they get ready to head out into their career, something, you know, beyond interview prep, something you wish someone had told you, or if there had been 1 or 2 huge learning experiences for you, whether they were successes or failures, but anything that you think could be helpful, and then I can walk through how we'll do the networking.
I would say always give the benefit of the doubt to the company that you start in, kind of try to learn why they're doing stuff, how they're doing it, try to understand, give them the credit that they probably thought about why they're doing things in a certain way, and then try to learn it and then change from that instead of coming and saying, hey, we should do things in a completely different way. Just kind of try to understand what's happening there, and that will kind of get you much more engaged and kind of really caring about what you're doing and about the mission of the company. I found that to be kind of really working for new engineers in the companies I've been working on.
For me, a lot of people, when they introduced themselves this morning, asked about how we've evolved in our careers and how we've stayed in the industry. You have to accept the fact that failure is a big part of it. I've failed, screwed up so many times. I remember, I've been laid off from multiple companies. Like, it's the nature of the game. I remember at one of my first jobs, I caused a production bug that cost the company something like 6 figures, and I was mortified. And then I remember one of the senior engineers said, oh yeah, that's pretty common. People do that. It can be a lot to get started in this industry, knowing that you're very junior and there's a lot of people around you who are really smart, who've been at it for a long time, and you wonder, oh, why can't I get there? Or what am I doing wrong? It's just a part of it. It's a lot of banging your head against the wall at a Stack Overflow question at 2 a.m. in the morning, wondering, why is this not working? And then you finally figure it out. It's because you flipped a bit, or you had the positive sign instead of the negative sign. It's a lot of that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in your coding projects at school. You think everything's right, and then you realize that you did something wrong in your for loop. That doesn't go away. I'm more than 10 years into this, and I still make those silly mistakes all the time. The difference is I've learned from most of them, and now I'm just making those mistakes in different programming languages. And it's just experience. So embrace the fact that you're going to constantly learn, you're going to constantly fail, and it's about the resilience to pick yourself back up and continue to push forward and make yourself stand out. I think that's really just the thing I would really want to emphasize again is it's a burgeoning industry. A lot of people want to get into it for good reason. But there's a lot of noise in that signal. So for every one candidate I see that actually makes it through the whole thing, there might be 100 people who don't make it through because they just don't have the skills, or they're not able to stand out effectively. So see what you can do to really stand out and make yourself known, so that you can, make it through the noise of all the other applicants who are trying to get these coveted positions.
Great. Thank you so much, Shira and Adam. This was super helpful. I'm not even an engineering major. I'm just organizing this, and I feel like I learned so much. So I'm sure our audience here feels the same way. We like to end these by doing virtual speed networking. So we use a platform called Hopin. Anyone who's been to any of these sessions so far this summer may be a bit familiar. So how this works, and I will put the link in the chat right now. So we have to leave Zoom and go to this other platform. It's a browser. It's nothing you should have to download. I'm told it works best in Google Chrome. That's what I use it in. You'll just have to register, your name and your email, and then there's some steps on how it works. But basically, you click on the networking button on the left-hand panel, and we'll just start being matched up at random for 4-minute conversations. So you're welcome to go in there and do that. It's a lot of fun. Stay as long or as short as you can. Well, I'll leave it open till 11:30 this morning. If you like how the conversation's going, both people, there's a green button that says connect. If both people hit connect, it will share your email address that you registered with each other. That will be stored in your Hopin profile. If you're not liking it, then you just hit leave at the end, and you choose that you don't want to connect. It's not like the person gets a big message that say, you said no to them or anything like that. But that link is there in the chat. You will need to close out of Zoom in order for that browser to enable your audio and video to work. You can't have them both running. So feel free to go over there. I'll leave this open while people get the link and everything set up. But thank you all so much for joining this morning and sharing your experiences and your questions. And we will hopefully see you over there in Hopin. Thanks.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.